In this video, I'm going to debunk the top 3 tiny house myths. So I try not to get a lot into politics when it comes to like he said, she said, or this or that or whatever. But having been in the tiny house community and the tiny house field for quite a while now, I feel like I kind of earned the right to at least have somewhat of an opinion on the matter, especially when it comes to price, because like I'm kind of in the whole middle of that whole scene. But I can kind of understand why people are saying that. They're saying that prices of tiny houses have become too high. And the reason I think people are saying that is because they're noticing a lot of builders have drifted away, not all, but a lot of them have drifted away from starter tiny houses. You know, the sub 20,000, sub 25,000 have gone much higher. And the reason I think they're doing that is so they can build less tiny houses and still make a profit for themselves, which, you know, being a business person myself, that makes complete sense. But there's still a lot of tiny houses out there that are in that price range, if they're used, or there's builders out there building at that price. So to say tiny houses have raised in price, like overall, like general, like I'm going to not buy a tiny house because they've all raised, is self-defeating. It doesn't make any sense because you can still build a tiny house yourself. The price of free materials has not gone up since the tiny house movement started. Free is free. And another thing is you can partially build it yourself, or you can have someone build it completely for you. Either way, keeping prices down. Most tiny house builders, if you go to them with a budget and tell them what you have, and as long as it's reasonable, you can't go and say I have $2,000, blah, blah, blah. A trailer costs way more than that. But as long as it's reasonable, for the most part, you'll find one that will work with you. If you go to the tinyhouselistings.com website and click on the builders page, there's dozens, even scores of tiny house builders all over the United States and Canada, and I think there's even some in Australia and the UK, that will build a tiny house for you and deliver it to you. You know, so it's not like you're not geographically bound. So you can kind of search around, look at people's work, see who does good work that like you think would be a good fit for you. Tell them what's up, tell them your budget, you know, and like don't just blanket, you know, like blindly say, hey, the prices of tiny houses have gone high, because you go on tinyhouselistings.com and see a lot of high priced tiny houses. Those are for people who have that budget, you know, who want to spend that kind of money. There's people who are living in tiny houses now who make hardly no money at all the way up to people, doctors, lawyers, people, you know, business owners that want to live tiny. There's a tiny house market out there that fits the low price models, mid price models, and high price models that addresses all of those. Now, I'm not saying that there's no tiny house builders out there or people who are building tiny houses to make a large profit. No, I'm not saying that. There's definitely some out there, which means you have to do your due diligence. And part of that due diligence can be one of those 9,422 emails that are sent to me and ask me, who do you recommend? Here's what's up. And I will do my best to answer you. I mean, like, you can see why my hands are like from all the emails. I'm just joking. But yeah, if you are serious about moving into a tiny house and you have even the most modest of budgets, there's someone out there, or a tiny house is already used on the website, tinyhouselistings.com, that's for you. You just have to simply go out there, do some due diligence, get up with me, all that. And if you're serious about moving to a tiny house, price doesn't necessarily have to be a determining factor. All right, so the second most heard, I guess you could call it excuse, that I'm hearing is that there's nowhere to park my tiny house. That's simply not true. Now, it is true that there are some major issues countrywide, and probably most first world countries wide, where there's severe restrictions on tiny houses. Yes, that's true. But there's lots of resources and places and ideas and methods that you can put into place to living and even owning land, if you like, if that's the approach you want to take, as far as living in a tiny house. So there's lots of resources out there for you to find a place to park your tiny house on. Some of them you'll probably have to be off the radar a little bit, some not so much. One of the best places I think so far is tinyhouseparking.com, which is a website I run where people can post land for sale or rent, or people can post wanted land for sale or rent. And that's going to be changing soon. That website is going to be kind of, so by the time you watch this video, it might have changed. But that's one resource. Another one, obvious resource, is Craigslist. You can place a wanted ad for land to park your house on someone's property or whatever. Of course, you need to get permission from your local zoning. Otherwise, you might run into some issues. So those are two good resources, tinyhouseparking.com and Craigslist. Another place that you'll notice, and I've been to many tiny houses in this setting, is an RV park. There's lots of places where people live full-time in an RV, which if you have the correct hookups, RV hookups for your tiny house, you can easily just back that bad boy in there and just start to live in tiny house style. Another option that I was actually looking at for myself, right now I'm actually building a tiny house on a foundation, but I was going to build one on a trailer and put it on a piece of land that previously had a mobile home on it, which meant there was already a septic tank, lines already ran, all that good stuff. So you could literally just park your tiny house there and make a couple adjustments and hook up to the facilities that were there previously. And another overall general rule is the farther outside of the city you are, not necessarily always, but a lot of times, the less restrictions you'll have. So what you'll need to do is contact your local planning and zoning department and tell them what your idea is, and a lot of times they'll work with you. You know, I've spoke with a lot of the counties around here in this area, and most of them, I'm not saying all, but are very excited to work with you, although their hands are tied as far as what they can allow you to do. As I make this video, there's 1,322 tiny houses that have been featured on my tinyhouseswoon.com website. Every one of them parked somewhere that people live in. So I guess what I'm trying to say as far as the whole parking situation for your tiny house, parking or putting on a foundation, if you want to take that route, there's options out there for you. And don't let someone else say, oh, there's nowhere to park them, and then you just feed into that myth, because it's not true. I just debunked it. So the last myth is more opinionated. This right here could go either way for you. But another one that I hear a lot is probably third most, which is why I'm putting it third in this video. Is people saying, there's no way I could fit my stuff, all of my stuff, inside of a tiny house. When you move into a tiny house, it's a complete lifestyle change. This is why I recommend, and a lot of other professionals in the tiny house movement have always said, go stay in one for a couple days and see how you like it. But if you decided that tiny house living is right for you and you're ready to go for it, you can't let the fact that you own a lot of stuff prevent you from it. That's the whole reason for moving into a tiny house, is to get rid of your stuff. Pick the items that you love the most, that you can't live without, and just completely throw away everything else that you, or give away or sell, that you don't need. I recently threw away 2 dump trucks full of stuff at my old house that I had had before I even decided that I loved the whole concept of living in a tiny house. Honestly, no joke, I can't remember hardly any of the stuff that I threw away, what it was. The thing about tiny houses is that they borrowed a lot of storage ideas that you see a lot of times in sailboats and boats. Believe it or not, in a tiny house, you can store a lot of stuff. A lot more than you imagine. Why did I make this video? Well, there's a lot of people out there that are really loud that are making excuses for why they haven't moved into a tiny house, and they're spreading it, and it's preventing others who who are very interested in the idea of tiny houses, is scaring them away. And I think that's very unfortunate, because the whole purpose of the tiny house movement is to tell more people about it, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And if you decide that it's right for you, just go for it. That sounds cliche, but it seriously is my job. I consider it to be my job to help you live and own a tiny house. So if there's anything I could do to help, please contact me, and I'll do the best I can. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.